So Simon Starling is a British artist. He has been exhibiting for 10, 15 years now. He came to probably the most prominent public attention in 2005 when he won the Turner Prize in London, and there was a particular piece which got a lot of headlines and a lot of coverage at the time called Shed Boat Shed, which involved him getting a shed that he found on the banks of the River Rhine, dismantling it, turning it into a boat, sailing it down the Rhine, pulling it into a museum on the banks of the Rhine, and then reassembling it as a shed. He makes these amazing kind of journeys, and he tells these incredible stories. And a lot of the inspiration, I think, for the work comes from the places where he travels to when he's invited to make an exhibition. And that was very much true of the exhibition here at St Ives. So when we asked him to come and do a show here, we wanted to bring a number of works together that he'd made over the last 5 years in different places around the world. But as part of that, he was really keen that he think about St Ives and Cornwall and think about what it meant for him to be here and to make new work out of this new place and this new situation. So this work is called The Long Tongue, and it's very simple in some ways, but it has this very, very complicated story and history that sort of surrounds it. And that's the case with a lot of Simon's work. First of all, it looks like a very basic or a very simple visual thing, but actually it's often very convoluted and complicated. So this work consists of 2 pieces of marble. The first piece of marble, this large piece of marble, is a piece of Chinese marble, and it weighs just over 1 ton, what used to be called in the old days a long ton. And it's counterbalanced on this pulley system that's been rigged up in the gallery by this smaller piece of marble, which is actually a piece of Italian Carrara marble. Now, Italian Carrara marble has been used for centuries by artists for sculpture, and it's a very highly prized, very valuable marble. And the Chinese marble is much, much cheaper. So despite the fact that the Chinese marble is much bigger, weighs much, much more, and has travelled a much greater distance to come to Europe, its market value is the same as this smaller piece of marble. Now, what Simon did to kind of re-emphasise this point was he purchased this 1 ton of Chinese marble from a quarry. So this is exactly as it was taken out of the quarry, basically. He hasn't done anything to it. And then the piece of Carrara marble, which is 1/4 the weight, he used a computer program and a kind of digital laser scanning techniques to exactly map and replicate this stone at 1/4 the size. So this is an exact copy, but scaled down by 3/4. So again, you have this idea of the real and the authentic, and the original object, and then the copy or the sculpture in a sense. This has been carved, so although it looks like a piece of rough cut marble, it's actually been very precision carved, and it's a sculpture in the truest sense. So this work starts to bringing all these different ideas about, as I say, the original and the copy, but also ideas of kind of globalization, economics, trade, and value. Which one do we value more? The found object or the sculpture, the original or the copy, or this kind of rougher marble from China, or the Italian marble that is much more highly valued. This is another work about mining, and as I was saying earlier, Simon became very interested when he came to Cornwall to think about the history of mining in this area, and the fact that he'd already made a number of works over the last few years about mines and mining all over the world. And the image that's reproduced in these 5 photographs is of a South African platinum mine. And Simon visited this platinum mine in South Africa back in 2005, and he took this photograph of the open cast mine. And what he did was, platinum is a very expensive material to mine, which is why platinum is such an expensive commodity. And you need to extract huge amounts of rock and ore, which is then refined down to a very small amount of platinum. And so he worked out how much platinum you could extract from a ton of platinum ore. And it's a very tiny amount. He then used a very old-fashioned technique, which is called platinum printing, to print these photographs using that platinum from the mine in South Africa. So essentially, the reason there are 5 images is that's as much platinum as you get out of a ton of rock. And the images themselves are made out of the very stuff that they picture. You know, it pictures the platinum mine, and the image itself is made up of platinum that's taken from that place. So in a way, the work is much more like a sculpture than a photograph. It's very much about the materials that are used to make it. But again, it's also about ideas of value and economics, and I think about that notion of commodity and cost. This is perhaps the most spectacular piece in the exhibition, and it was one of the works that Simon made especially for the show here at Tate St Ives. And it was very much based on a visit that he made to the galleries about a year ago when he came down and we first began talking about the exhibition. And Simon was in this space, and I think he was in this amazing gallery which we have here at Tate St Ives, looking out over Porthmeor Beach and the Atlantic Ocean. And it took him back. He began to remember an exhibition that he'd been involved in 2 years before in another gallery by the sea, which is the Pier Art Centre. And that gallery is right up in the far north of the UK, up in Orkney, off the coast of Scotland. And again, it's a smaller gallery than Tate St Ives, but it has these amazing spaces that have these windows that look out over the sea. And so I think Simon began to think about whether he could somehow bring that experience of being in Orkney back to St Ives. And what he decided to do was to create an exact one-to-one scale replica of the gallery space in Orkney, the Pier Art Centre, inside this gallery at St Ives. And he wanted to construct it on this kind of metal scaffolding. So, I mean, for me it almost feels like a ship in a bottle, because when you come to the gallery you see it from the outside and it's like an impossible construction, you know, how did you get it in here? But there's also this really important connection between St Ives and the Pier Art Centre, and it's that there was a great collector of modern art, Margaret Gardiner, and she bought lots and lots of work by artists who were associated with St Ives and the colony here through the 20th century. So she bought Barbara Hepworth and Ben Nicholson and Naum Garbo and Peter Lanyon and Alfred Wallace. And in the 70s she donated that collection to the Pier Art Centre. So all of that collection of work that had been made in St Ives now has a permanent home right up in the far north. And so again, I think Simon suddenly realised that he could re-establish that connection, because he'd exhibited up there and now he was exhibiting down here in Tate St Ives. So there was this kind of exchange going on. And so, as well as reconstructing the gallery space and physically kind of bringing it to St Ives, almost like a kind of, as I say, a ship in a bottle, he also brought one work from the collection at the Pier Art Centre, which is a small Alfred Wallace painting. And that's come back and that's also hung on the wall in that gallery. And so in a way there's this other kind of return, and it's the return of one of the works that was made here back to the place that it was created, you know, over 60, 70 odd years ago. Yeah, I think it's a very kind of poetic and beautiful gesture.